Poor widow takes twins to eat with $15 on Christmas Eve. Then Mafia boss walks in. What he did next? The city was quiet, yet not silent. Snow fell in gentle sheets, covering the streets in white. Street lamps flickered through the night, their golden light melting into the shadows of dark alleys. The smell of burnt coal and pine from the nearby square mingled with the cold air, carrying a hint of Christmas cheer that felt distant, almost cruel to those who had no joy to greet. Mara clutched the hands of her twin children, Lily and Leo, as they trudged through the icy streets. Her coat was worn, the seams patched many times, and her boots had holes at the soles. She shivered but did not complain. The children, too young to fully understand their hunger, leaned close to her, their small hands seeking warmth. "Just a little further, my loves," she whispered, forcing a smile. Her voice was soft, almost a melody against the harsh wind, but it carried the weight of exhaustion. She had only $15 in her purse, and that was barely enough for a single meal, let alone for three. Yet she was determined. Tonight she would make it special, even if it meant scraping the bottom of her courage. Ahead, a diner glowed like a beacon. Its windows steamed from the warmth inside, and a faint scent of bread and roasted coffee drifted out into the cold. Mara's heart lifted. It wasn't much, but it was hope, and hope, she knew, could keep a family alive. They stepped inside, the warmth immediately brushing against their chilled skin. The bell above the door jingled softly, announcing their entrance. The smell of food, of spices and roasted meat, wrapped around them, and for a moment Mara felt her heart lighten. "Table for three, please," she said, her voice steady even though her hands trembled slightly. She laid her few bills on the counter, careful to keep track of every coin. The waitress, a kindly woman with gray-streaked hair, gave her a soft smile. "You'll do fine, dear. Just order what you can." Mara nodded and guided her children to a small booth by the window. Lily immediately pressed her nose against the glass, watching the snow fall in delicate spirals. Leo clutched his mother's sleeve, his small face pale and worried. Mara smiled down at them. "It's Christmas Eve, my loves. Tonight we eat well and we remember warmth." As they settled, the door opened again, this time with a heavy, deliberate sound. Mara didn't look up at first, focusing on the children's joy as they marveled at the little treats on the table. But the atmosphere changed the moment she felt it, a presence in the room that seemed larger than the space itself. All eyes turned. A man entered, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His clothes were perfect, immaculately tailored, as though he had stepped out of a world far removed from this small diner. The air around him felt colder and yet heavier, as if it carried the weight of power. Mara's heart caught in her chest. She had heard of him before, Dante Morley, a man who commanded loyalty and fear in equal measure. A mafia boss whose name whispered through the city like a shadow on the wind. And yet, there was something else, something she couldn't name, something that made her chest tighten with both fear and curiosity. Dante's gaze swept the diner with an ease that made others shrink slightly in their seats. Then his eyes fell on Mara and her children. Noticing the small table with just a few coins and the modest plates she had ordered, his expression remained unreadable, but the corners of his lips twitched ever so slightly. He moved toward them, each step measured and quiet. Mara instinctively stiffened, her grip tightening on the children's hands. Lily looked up at her mother, sensing the tension, and Leo leaned closer, hiding his face in her coat. "You're dining alone with only $15 on Christmas Eve." Dante's voice was smooth, soft, almost hypnotic, yet it carried an edge of authority. He stopped at their table, and Mara felt the warmth of the diner dim in comparison to the presence before her. Mara swallowed. I have to make sure they eat. It's all I can afford." Her voice shook slightly, though she tried to keep it calm. She had faced hardship all her life, but this man, his mere presence seemed to make the world sharper, more dangerous. Dante's eyes softened ever so slightly as he looked at the twins. Lily and Leo, innocent and unknowing of the danger that might lie in this stranger's eyes, smiled at him. Their laughter was a quiet sound, like tiny bells in the frozen air outside. Something stirred in Dante at that sound, a sensation he hadn't felt in years, tenderness. "May I join you?" he asked, a question that sounded polite but carried a weight that Mara could not ignore. "No, thank you," she replied quickly, her pride bristling. "We don't want to trouble anyone." Dante's gaze lingered on her, piercing yet calm, studying her as if reading pages of a book. "I'm not trouble," he said simply. There was a hint of something in his voice, a promise or perhaps a warning, that made Mara hesitate. She looked down at the table, at the children's eager eyes, and forced herself to stay calm. She knew who he was. She had heard whispers in the alleys, in the market, tales of a man who could destroy lives with a single word, yet also protect with a fierce loyalty once he chose to care. Mara did not trust easily, and certainly not someone like him. But Dante did not leave. He waited, silent, watching the family as if considering them, weighing their worth. The twins, unaware of the tension, chattered about the lights outside, about wishing for snowmen and warm blankets. Mara felt a pang in her chest. This man, this stranger, had the power to ruin lives or save them. And yet, despite herself, she noticed that he seemed human for the briefest moment. Dante's attention shifted for a second to the clock on the wall. Then, almost casually, he reached into his coat and placed a note beside Mara's plate. She looked down and saw the handwriting perfect, deliberate. "Consider it a gift," it read. Mara's fingers trembled as she looked up at him. I can't accept this," she said. He inclined his head slightly, a small shadow of a smile on his lips. "Then consider it a promise. Fate has a way of collecting debts in the strangest forms. Tonight is only the beginning." Before she could respond, Dante turned and walked toward the door. His presence lingered, as though the air itself remembered him long after he left. Mara watched him go, her heart pounding. The diner felt smaller now, the warmth less certain, but the note remained, a tangible proof of an encounter that would change everything. Lily and Leo tugged at her sleeves, their small faces full of wonder. "Mom, who was that man?" Lily asked. Mara hesitated, unsure what to say. Someone important," she murmured, tucking the note into her coat pocket. As they finished their simple meal, Mara could not shake the feeling that tonight had shifted something fundamental. The world outside, with its harsh snow and bitter cold, seemed darker now, and yet somehow filled with a strange kind of hope. When they stepped back into the night, the snow had thickened. The street lamps glowed like halos through the flakes, and the city seemed quieter than ever. Mara held her children close, feeling their small bodies shiver against hers. And then in the distance, she saw a figure watching from the shadows, tall, silent, eyes gleaming in the winter night. She could not tell if he was friend or foe, protector or predator. All she knew was that something in the world had changed, something dangerous and powerful, and that the snow would never look the same again. The note burned in her pocket, a silent reminder. Fate has a debt to collect. Mara clutched her children tighter. She did not know what awaited them nor why, but one thing was certain. This Christmas Eve would not end quietly. And the man who had entered her life so suddenly, like a shadow slipping into the candlelight, would return. The wind whispered through the alleys, carrying a promise and a warning both. Mara looked at her twins, and in that moment resolved to protect them, no matter what storms, human or supernatural, were to come. The city slept beneath the snow, unaware that its streets now held more than just quiet and cold. Somewhere in the shadows, a destiny had begun to stir, and for Mara and her children, nothing would ever be the same again. Cliffhanger. Fate had begun its move, and it would not wait. The morning after Christmas Eve, the city seemed quieter than usual. Snow covered the rooftops like a thick white blanket, and the streets glimmered under the weak sunlight. Yet for Mara, the quiet felt heavy, almost too still. She had tried to push away the encounter from last night, the man in the diner, the mysterious note, but the memory refused to leave her mind. Lily and Leo had woken early, tugging at her hands to play in the snow. Mara had smiled, laughing softly as they built a small snowman outside their tiny apartment. Yet even as they played, she kept her eyes on the street, unconsciously looking for a shadow, a sign that last night's visitor might return. She did not know that someone was already watching. Dante Morley had not forgotten the widow and her children. The diner had only been the first step. Something about Mara's resilience, her quiet dignity in the face of hardship, and the laughter of the twins had stirred something long buried within him. Normally, he controlled the city with fear, yet this family had awakened a curiosity and a rare tenderness he could not ignore. By late afternoon, a discreet messenger appeared at Mara's door, holding a small envelope with her name. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a simple card, elegant in its design. "Come to me. You and the children are safe. Fate has more to show." Mara's heart raced. Fear and suspicion clashed with a strange pull she could not explain. She knew the risks. Dante was powerful, dangerous, untouchable in his world. But she also felt the weight of the promise he had left, a debt that might be collected in ways she could not predict. She looked at Lily and Leo, their small faces bright with curiosity. "Mom, who is he?" Leo asked, pointing at the card. I don't know yet," Mara said, folding the note carefully. "But we must be cautious." Even as she spoke, a feeling of inevitability settled over her. Perhaps it was the pull she felt in her chest, perhaps the way the snow seemed to hush the city around them, but she knew she could not ignore this path. By evening, Mara found herself walking the streets toward Dante's mansion. The snow had thickened, coating the city in a quiet brilliance. Lanterns glimmered through frosted windows, but the streets were otherwise empty. Her children held her hands tightly, and Mara could feel the tension in their small bodies. The mansion rose before them like a shadowed fortress. Its tall spires and Gothic windows seemed almost to pierce the sky. Candles flickered behind heavy curtains, casting long shapes across the walls, as if the house itself were alive, aware of every movement. Mara's breath caught. She had never seen such grandeur nor felt such an oppressive presence. Yet Dante was waiting. The door opened before she could knock, revealing him in the hallway. He wore a dark coat that brushed the marble floor, and his eyes, sharp, dark, and unreadable, met hers immediately. There was no anger in his gaze, nor warmth, only observation, as if he were weighing her courage and resolve. "Welcome," he said softly, his voice calm but commanding. "You have come despite the risks. That shows bravery," Mara swallowed. "I came because you asked, but I still do not understand why." Dante's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because you have something worth protecting, something rare, and because I believe," he paused, then looked at the twins, who stared at him with wide eyes, "that you deserve a choice in a world that seldom offers one." Mara did not answer immediately. Her instinct told her to flee, yet she could not deny the strange pull, the sense that this night would change everything. Dante stepped aside, allowing them to enter, the warm glow of the mansion washing over them. The interior was magnificent, yet dark in a way that hinted at secrets. Walls were lined with books, ancient and leather-bound, and strange artifacts cast eerie shadows. Candles flickered across tall ceilings, and a fireplace roared in the grand hall, filling the room with warmth. The twins' eyes sparkled at the sight, their small hands gripping their mother's tightly. "Sit," Dante said, guiding them to a large, polished table. Servants moved silently in the background, bringing food and drink. Mara hesitated. This was more than she had ever imagined, yet something in Dante's calm manner reassured her slightly. "You need not be afraid," he said gently, though there was an undercurrent of power in his tone. No one here will harm you or your children. I offer only protection and choices. Mara's lips pressed together. Protection sounded kind, but coming from a man like Dante, it was complicated. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart raced. Dante studied her for a long moment. "Nothing, not yet. Perhaps only your trust if you can give it. Trust is rare in my world, more rare than gold." The twins giggled as they examined the luxurious spread before them. Lily picked up a small candle holder, pretending it was a crown, while Leo attempted to balance his bread roll like a small tower. Dante's eyes softened as he watched them, the faintest trace of warmth in his otherwise cold demeanor. Mara couldn't help but notice. There was something almost human behind the mask of power. She wondered if all men of the underworld had such moments, hidden like treasures behind stone walls. Hours passed, and Mara began to see glimpses of Dante's life. He did not boast or brag, nor did he command with fear in this room. Yet subtle hints, an artifact here, a scroll there, spoke of a family history steeped in power, secrecy, and perhaps supernatural influence. Mara sensed there was more to him than the world would ever know. "You feel it, don't you?" Dante asked suddenly, his voice quiet. Mara looked up, startled. "Feel what?" she asked cautiously. "The weight of legacy, of choice, of destiny," he said. "The city is cruel, people suffer. Some lives are dictated by power, some by survival, and some by forces beyond even our understanding." Mara felt a chill at his words, though the fire warmed her hands. She did not know if he spoke metaphorically or literally. The air itself seemed to hum with a quiet energy, as if the mansion had absorbed centuries of power and secrecy. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked softly. "Because you are part of it now," Dante said simply. "The choices you make will matter, and the children, they are important, perhaps more than you know." The twins laughed, breaking the tension. Lily ran to Dante, offering him a small snowflake she had pressed between her gloves earlier. He accepted it with surprising gentleness, his gloved fingers brushing hers. Leo imitated her, offering a small crumb of bread. For a moment Mara felt something shift, a thread of humanity in a man whose life had been shadows and power. But the peace did not last. A sudden noise echoed from the hall, sharp and deliberate. Dante's posture stiffened immediately, and Mara felt a ripple of fear. She had not realized how vulnerable they were, how exposed even in such grandeur. The twins clung to her instinctively. Dante rose, his movements fluid and commanding. "Stay here," he ordered, voice low. In an instant he disappeared into the shadows of the hallway. Mara could hear soft footfalls, the muffled scrape of a shoe, and then silence. Minutes later Dante returned, his expression unreadable, though his eyes carried a faint warning. "There are always those who would test the boundaries of my world," he said. "Tonight you are safe, but the city has its dangers. The choices I offer are not simple." Mara nodded, trying to steady her racing heart. "I do not know if I can trust you," she admitted, her voice quiet. Dante smiled faintly, a shadow of amusement in his dark eyes. "You are wise to say that. Trust is earned, not given. But perhaps we can start with protection and later understanding." He stepped closer, his gaze shifting from her to the twins. "They are brave like you. That courage will be needed in the nights to come." Mara looked at him, feeling a strange mixture of fear, curiosity, and something else. The pull she had felt in the diner was stronger now, a gravity she could not resist. She did not yet know what this man intended, but she understood one undeniable truth. Her life, and the lives of her children, were no longer entirely their own. Night deepened, and Dante escorted them to guest rooms within the mansion. The twins were asleep almost immediately, exhausted from excitement and cold. Mara lay awake for hours, staring at the candlelight dancing across the ceiling, thinking of the strange man who had entered their lives. He had offered protection, but with it came power and danger. He had promised nothing explicitly, Yet the air around him suggested influence that reached far beyond her understanding, and she could not stop thinking about the note in her pocket from the diner. Mara did not know what debt was meant, nor why it concerned her family, but she sensed it was the beginning of something larger, something that might demand courage beyond what she thought she possessed. Cliffhanger. Mara awoke with a start, the wind rattling the windows. The mansion, once welcoming, now felt alive with unseen eyes, and she realized that the path ahead would not only test her courage but also the strength of her heart. Fate had begun its next move, and it would demand more than she was ready to give. The mansion was quiet, but the silence did not comfort Mara. She moved through the grand halls with Lily and Leo close behind, the soft padding of their small feet echoing across the marble floors. Candlelight flickered against the walls, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. Mara could not shake the feeling that the house itself was alive, aware of every step, every breath. Dante had left them in their rooms after dinner, speaking little but watching intently. His presence lingered in the corners, a quiet gravity that made Mara feel both protected and uneasy. She knew he was powerful, that his influence stretched far beyond the walls of this mansion, but the subtle hints of something beyond human, something almost supernatural, made her heart race. The twins were asleep now, their soft breathing steady and calm. Mara sat by the window, watching snow swirl against the night sky. She clutched the note from the diner, still folded neatly in her pocket, and wondered what fate truly meant. The world she had known, the one filled with simple struggles, was gone. Everything had changed in one evening. The next morning, Dante appeared in the hallway as she prepared breakfast. He did not announce himself. He simply stood there, tall and still, his dark eyes observing. Mara stiffened. "You do not need to fear me," he said softly, though the weight behind his words made her heart flutter. "I bring guidance, not harm, but there are truths you must understand." "Truths?" Mara asked, setting plates on the table. "I only want to protect my children, that is all." Dante studied her, a faint smile touching his lips. "And yet your courage and your love make you part of something larger. The city is not just streets and snow. There are forces you cannot see, powers that have lived long before us. My family carries a legacy tied to them." Mara paused, knife in hand. "Legacy," he nodded. "A curse, perhaps, or a protection, depending on how it is treated. Our line has been burdened with choices that affect not just ourselves, but the lives of others. And tonight, you will see why you are here. Why fate has chosen you." The twins giggled as they played with their breakfast, but Mara's eyes never left Dante. She could sense that this was no ordinary man, no ordinary offer. And the more she watched him, the more she realized that her life, and the lives of her children, was entangled with something far beyond understanding. That night, Dante led Mara and the twins to a part of the mansion they had not yet seen. The walls were lined with ancient tomes, strange artifacts, and portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow their every movement. The air smelled of old parchment and candle wax, a scent both comforting and unsettling. "This room contains the history of my family," Dante said quietly. "It is a record of choices, victories, and mistakes. There are shadows here, and if you are to remain safe, you must understand them." Mara looked around, absorbing the gravity of his words. The portraits of men and women, some stern, some kind, gave a sense of lineage and responsibility. Dante moved toward a small cabinet and opened it, revealing a crystal orb that shimmered with faint light. "This is the heart of the legacy," he said. "It is tied to power and danger alike. Those who seek to harm my family will always be drawn to it, and those who are destined to protect it will find themselves tested." Mara felt a shiver run down her spine. She had survived hardship before, but the world Dante hinted at was unlike anything she had ever faced. And yet, she felt a strange pull, as if she had been drawn here for a reason she did not yet understand. The twins, oblivious to the tension, approached the orb. Lily reached out, her small hand brushing the crystal. Light shimmered in response, dancing across the walls. Dante watched her carefully, his expression unreadable. "Do not touch it carelessly," he warned. "Its power is not for play." But perhaps it recognizes courage when it sees it. Mara stepped forward, taking Lily's hand gently. "You must be careful, sweetie," she said. "Some things are not meant for little hands." Dante's gaze softened as he watched them. "You see, it is not just power or danger that defines us," he said. "It is courage, love, and the choices we make that shape the world around us." Days passed, and Mara began to notice subtle changes in Dante. He was still a man of control and mystery, yet in small moments. When the twins laughed, when he allowed himself to smile, she glimpsed a tenderness that contradicted the fearsome reputation he carried. One evening, as snow fell heavier than ever, a distant sound echoed through the mansion, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. Mara froze, her heart racing. Dante appeared at her side instantly, his presence a protective shadow. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. "I do," he said. "There are those who would challenge us, forces beyond the ordinary, drawn to the heart of the family and to those who share it." Fear clawed at Mara's chest, but she did not retreat. She had survived loss, hunger, and hardship. She would not falter now. "Then we face them," she said, her voice firm. "Together." Dante's eyes darkened, and for a moment she saw the weight of centuries in his gaze. "Together," he echoed. That night the first threat arrived. A shadowy figure moved along the perimeter of the mansion, unseen by servants, but sensed by the strange energy that filled the halls. Mara slept fitfully, dreams filled with whispers and fleeting images of danger. Lily and Leo clutched her in their sleep, sensing the tension that Mara could not hide. Dante moved silently through the halls, unseen and swift. He confronted the intruder before any harm could be done, the shadow dissolving into nothingness as if it had never been. When he returned to the room, his expression was calm, but his eyes were stormy. "They are coming," he said. "Those who envy, those who fear, and those who wish to exploit the darkness that lingers in my family. You must understand, Mara, that your presence here puts you and the children in danger." Mara's chest tightened, but she did not shrink. "Then we face it," she repeated. "I am not afraid if you are here." For a moment, Dante's gaze softened completely. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said. "Perhaps the world is changing, or perhaps it has always needed courage like yours." The twins stirred in their sleep, and Dante's dark eyes lingered on them. Mara felt a warmth from him, protective and quiet, unlike anything she had expected. Despite the danger, there was a strange sense of safety in his presence, a promise that they would endure whatever came. Over the next days, Mara and Dante grew closer, though neither spoke of romance. Instead, their bond formed in small moments, sharing warmth by the fire, teaching the twins small lessons of courage, and navigating the strange mansion that seemed alive with power. Mara began to see Dante not just as a man of influence, but as a person burdened with legacy and solitude. The weight he carried was immense, and yet he chose to show glimpses of care and understanding, even when the world demanded ruthlessness. And Dante, in turn, began to see Mara not as a simple widow, but as a woman whose courage rivaled the strength of his own. Her love for her children, her refusal to yield to fear, and her quiet dignity were a balm to a heart hardened by centuries of responsibility and darkness. Yet the shadows never rested. One night, as the city slept under a blanket of snow, Dante sensed a deeper threat approaching. A rival faction, aware of his family's legacy, had moved closer, drawn by whispers of power and the presence of Mara and the twins. The mansion trembled slightly, as if warning of what was to come. Dante called Mara into the grand hall. "You must understand," he said, "that the safety we have enjoyed is fragile. Forces beyond our control are stirring, and the night ahead will test all of us." Mara took the twins' hands in hers. "I will not run," she said firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Dante nodded, the faintest trace of relief in his gaze. "Very well," he said. "Then we prepare, and hope that courage and not fear will guide us." The night deepened, shadows lengthening across the mansion. Mara felt the weight of destiny pressing upon her shoulders, yet also a strange hope. She did not know what awaited them, but for the first time, she felt that she was not entirely powerless. Cliffhanger. Mara, Dante, and the twins slept unaware, yet the first true test of their courage and bond had begun. The city lay under a heavy blanket of snow, streets glistening under the pale light of the moon. The wind moaned softly through the alleys, carrying the faint scent of pine and smoke from distant chimneys. For Mara, the quiet was deceptive. Danger lingered like a shadow at the edge of every street. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with tension. Dante moved silently through the halls, his senses sharp, every muscle coiled as if ready for battle. Mara and the twins followed closely behind, their small hands clutched in hers. Lily's wide eyes searched every corner, and Leo's small voice whispered questions that Mara tried to answer with calm she did not entirely feel. "They are coming," Dante said, his voice low but steady. "Those who seek to harm us, to claim the power tied to my family, are near. Tonight we fight for more than survival." Mara nodded, her chest tight with fear but also with resolve. She had faced hunger, loss, and despair, yet the thought of letting harm touch her children stirred a courage she did not know she possessed. "Then we face it," she said. "Together." Dante allowed himself a small nod, and for the first time Mara noticed a faint vulnerability in his expression. The weight of centuries, of legacy, and of power pressed heavily on him, yet he chose to stand with her, not above her. Outside, the rival faction moved through the city, unaware that Dante's senses had already detected them. Shadows flickered across the streets as the enemy approached, drawn by whispers of the mansion's power and the presence of Mara and her children. Inside, the mansion itself seemed to respond. The walls, lined with ancient artifacts and portraits, shimmered faintly under the moonlight. A strange energy pulsed through the halls, almost as if the house itself was alive, ready to aid those who were worthy and to punish those who were not. Mara felt a shiver run down her spine. She did not understand the full extent of what Dante had inherited, but she could sense the danger and the protection. Somehow, in this vast and mysterious place, they were not entirely alone. The first strike came swiftly. A shadowy figure broke through the outer gates, moving like smoke across the garden. Dante intercepted instantly, his presence a wall of power and authority. Mara and the twins were hidden behind a pillar as the figure lunged, but Dante's movements were precise, almost predatory. With a single swift motion, he disarmed the intruder, and the shadow dissipated into the night as if it had never existed. "Stay close," Dante instructed, his voice calm but firm. "The night is not over." Mara held the twins tightly, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of the fight, not just in her surroundings, but in the strange energy that pulsed through the mansion. Something beyond human was at play, yet Dante's presence gave her a sense of safety she could not ignore. "They will try again," he said, his dark eyes scanning the windows. "This is only the beginning. The legacy demands its due." Mara's mind raced. "What does that mean?" she asked. "What legacy?" Dante's gaze softened as he looked at her. "A responsibility my family has carried for centuries. Power comes with danger, and danger comes with choices. You and the children are now part of that chain, but it is not without hope. Courage and love can change the outcome, even against forces that seem unstoppable." As the night deepened, the intruders returned, more determined and more numerous. Mara felt the cold fear pressing against her chest, yet she refused to falter. She watched Dante move through the shadows, his presence commanding and precise, and something within her stirred. She realized then that the fear she had carried all her life, the fear of failing her children, of being powerless, was no longer absolute. With Dante beside her, the twins in her arms, she felt strength she had not known. Courage was not the absence of fear, she realized, but the choice to act despite it. Dante's movements were a blur, and yet she could see his care in every strike, every command. He did not fight recklessly. He protected, he defended, and he ensured that Mara and the twins remained unharmed. In that moment, Mara understood that he was not just a man of power, but a man of responsibility, bound by a legacy that demanded both courage and compassion. Hours passed like minutes, and finally the intruders were driven back. The mansion, glowing in the flicker of candles and moonlight, stood untouched, though the energy within it seemed exhausted, as if it had lent every ounce of strength to the defenders. Mara collapsed onto a nearby chair, pulling Lily and Leo close. "Are you both all right?" she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. Lily nodded, burying her face in Mara's chest. Leo clutched her hand tightly, his small body shivering. Mara smiled despite the exhaustion. "We are," she said softly, "and we will be safe now." Dante stood nearby, his gaze sweeping over them. For the first time, his posture relaxed slightly, and the faintest trace of a smile appeared on his lips. Mara noticed it, and a warmth spread through her chest. In the midst of darkness, he had brought safety, not just with power, but with vigilance and somehow with care. The next morning, the city seemed quieter, gentler, almost as if it had exhaled after the storm of the night. Snowflakes glimmered in the sunlight, and the streets sparkled under the crisp winter air. Mara and the twins stepped outside, marveling at the serene beauty. Dante joined them, his dark eyes scanning the city as if ensuring nothing remained to threaten them. Mara felt a shift in him, something softer, lighter, almost human behind the mask of power. "You have shown courage," he said quietly, "and because of it the threat is gone for now, but the world will continue to test you. The key is to face each trial with the same strength you have shown these past nights." Mara looked at him, realizing that she no longer saw only the dangerous, powerful man she had first met in the diner. She saw someone capable of tenderness, someone whose legacy had hardened him, yet whose heart could still respond to love and bravery. The twins ran ahead, laughing and building small snowmen. Mara watched them, and then she looked at Dante. "Thank you," she said simply, "for protecting us and for believing in us." Dante's expression softened, a rare vulnerability touching his features. "It is not just protection," he said. "It is trust. You and the children have shown me that even in darkness there is light. And perhaps, even a heart long hidden can find warmth again." Days turned into weeks, and the mansion grew livelier with the sound of children's laughter. Mara found herself adjusting to this new world, a world of power, danger, and yet remarkable beauty. She learned the history of Dante's family, the curse that lingered, and the responsibilities it carried. She also learned that courage, love, and choice could break even the most ancient bonds. Dante remained close, guiding and protecting them, yet giving Mara space to nurture her children and to find her own strength. The bond between them deepened, not through force, but through mutual respect, shared trials, and quiet moments of understanding. One evening, as snow fell gently outside, Mara and Dante walked the terrace together. The city spread beneath them like a sparkling sea of white, quiet and peaceful. Lily and Leo played nearby, their laughter carried softly on the wind. "You have changed me," Dante said quietly, his gaze fixed on her. "I thought I had long lost the ability to care, to hope, and yet you and your children have awakened something I did not know was still there." Mara felt her heart quicken, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. "And you have given us a place in your world," she said softly, "a place where we are safe and where courage can matter." Dante turned to her, his dark eyes steady, unwavering. "Then perhaps we can face whatever comes next together." Mara smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in years. She had survived hardship, danger, and loss. Now she stood with a man who carried centuries of power and responsibility, and together they had created a sanctuary for her children and herself. The snow continued to fall, soft and pure, blanketing the city in white. For the first time in her life, Mara felt hope, real, unshakable hope. She had found safety, courage, and even love not through chance, but through choices that had led them here. As Mara, Dante, and the twins stood on the terrace, a shadow moved on the rooftops far across the city. A figure watched them, distant yet aware, and a whisper carried on the wind. This is only the beginning. Power, legacy, and destiny are not yet finished with them. Mara did not notice the figure, but Dante's hand brushed hers, a silent promise that no matter what came, they would face it together. The city slept beneath the snow, the mansion glowing like a beacon. Fate had been challenged, courage had been proven, and love, quiet, patient, enduring, had begun to bloom in the midst of shadows. And though the future remained uncertain, Mara knew one thing: she would no longer stand in fear. With Dante at her side, she had found strength, hope, and the courage to face whatever destiny awaited.